So today, welcome again on this webinar on Ativo Agile Programs for Jira, and I'm excited to have you all here. So I will maybe first present myself. I'm Edwin Rosy. I'm the founder of Ativo.io. I have myself more than 10 years of experience in program, project, and change management. I've started in the classic program and project management methodologies like Prince2 and MSP, and I've shifted more and more towards Agile and Scrum methodologies. And today I'm a certified SAFe advanced Scrum Master. So maybe let's ask a question to you then. Who of you has experience with managing Scrum teams or Scrum or Agile programs? Let me know. You can unmute yourself, or you can simply post a message in the chat. So let's see. Don't be shy. To make it a bit more interactive. Okay, no response so far. Maybe another question then. Who of you? So Edward, he's a release train engineer, so a program manager in SAFe terminology. And Carlos, hi, thanks for responding. So you have 5 years of experience as a Scrum Master and help programs up to 200 developers. That's already quite a big program, I think. So great, thanks for that response. And my second question would be, who of you has worked already with SAFe, so the Scaled Agile framework? Who has experience with that? Let me know in the chat. Obviously, Edward being a release train engineer, that's of course a SAFe terminology. So I think Edward, you have obviously 5 years. Yes, indeed. You're saying. And what about you, Carlos? Is it an Agile program? So Carlos tried to scale Agile for 2 years. One of those using a simplified version of SAFe. Yeah, it's what I see as well. That when people are using SAFe or other methodologies, they always bring a twist in it and use the elements that are most relevant. I think it's generally a good thing if you use a methodology really for what's most relevant for you. And Karen is also a release train engineer, so a program manager for 2 years. Okay, great. So let's continue then and take a look at the agenda of today. So this is a demo session on how to use Ativo Agile Programs for Jira, and that's a plugin in Jira to plan and follow up Agile programs, so with a program board and other visuals that we will discover. I will show you first the setup of the program teams and periods very quickly, and then show you how to plan a program with this online program board, how to plan features, how to plan and see dependencies, set commitments. That's something also typically for SAFe, and also risk and issues, how to raise them. So we'll cover that as well. And then we go further to the progress review, so how you can support a Scrum of Scrums or an ArtSync. This session, it's only 30 minutes, so don't hesitate. I appreciate interactivity. If you have questions, you can ask them. You can unmute yourself if you want, or ask it via the chat. If it's a brief question, if it's a larger question, at the end there's a Q&A session at the end of this session, there's a Q&A. So let's maybe talk a bit first about program planning. Why is this important? Because obviously when you're an Agile organization, you want to promote change, not follow a plan. That's in the manifesto. You want to promote human interaction. You don't want to follow a process or a tool. But if you, so those are good things, obviously. But if you have a program of 100 persons or 200 persons, like Carlos, you obviously will need a process, a planning, and a tool to support you. So the message here in this session is not is how to do the planning and how to support it the right way, how to create a maximum of human interaction, how to have the necessary but minimal amount of documentation because we don't want to write a book, how to use lean visual management techniques. and how to create a plan that's open for change. So that's the idea behind the plugin. And if you do it that way, you will see certain benefits. And the first is that you will create a common understanding between IT and business. And that's something that I hear often in organization that I visit, is that when they adopt Agile or SAFe or any other framework, you sometimes hear the feedback from management that say, or from the business that say, okay, now that we have these Kanban boards, okay, and we have these demos, these are good things, but what we're missing a bit is the forecast, is the big picture, where we will be in 3 months or 6 months. And if you create a program plan, if you show this forecast to the business and to management, that's valuable for them. So that's a first thing. I think that's a benefit of doing program planning properly and doing it visually. A second benefit that you can have is that you can have a faster delivery if you handle the issues and risks, which always occur, of course, if you handle them properly. And you can do that if you visualize them, if you bring them forward clearly toward management or towards other teams, so they can be taken up. And I think that's also important, and also a benefit of doing program planning. The third benefit is that you can avoid frustration when managing dependencies. And also this one, I think, is a challenge in some organization. Even when you have dedicated teams, as promoted by SAFe, you often have cross-team dependencies. You cannot avoid them all the time. And when you have these dependencies, you will at some time need to take a decision if a team works either on their own feature or on the feature of another team. So yeah, in that case, you have a dependency, and in that case, you need to take a decision on priorities. And the business can take this decision if they have a clear view on it. So for that, we need obviously to have an overview and a good planning for that. So that's a third benefit. And the fourth benefit is that you have more transparency if your plan is transparent, of course, and that the teams become happier because of that. It's Friedrich Herzberg. He's a psychologist who became one of the most influential names in business management. And he has done a publication which is called One More Time, How Do You Motivate Employees, which sold over 1 million reprints. And in that paper, he explains that if you responsibilize people, if you give them recognition, you will motivate them. And by motivating them, they will perform better. So that's also a benefit of creating this, why it's important to create that transparency on the plan. And why it's a good thing to let all the program members, so the developers, the business experts, the QA experts, everyone participate in this program planning, like SAFe advocates. Because that will give a boost to their motivation, and it will increase their performance. So I think those are all important reasons why program planning is necessary. So let's go further to the demo and the settings that are prepared. So let's say that we have one program, a program called Program Blue, which has 4 teams that contribute to it. So we have Team Lion, we have Team Rabbit, we have Team Horse, and Team Owl. Those are all 4 different dedicated teams. The program also has a set of features that need to be implemented, and we're planning the program for the next period. We don't want to plan too far ahead. I think 7 sprints, that's already quite large. Usually companies might do it shorter, but just for this demo, we've created a period with 7 sprints. And we will use Jira software and the plugin Ativo Agile Programs for Jira. So I will now switch my screen to the demo. Okay, yeah, there it is. Good. So I will start here. So we're inside Jira. You see the standard screen of Jira with the backlog open. So what I've done here is actually opened the backlog of one of the teams, Team Line, that is contributing. And what you see here, if you're using Jira, you know this already by heart. You see the backlog of the team with the different sprints that are created. So we see 7 sprints that are open for team line. We have a backlog just with 2 stories. Usually, of course, it's a lot more. And we see that there's already stories planned in the sprint. So we're assuming here that we're already started the PI planning or the program planning exercise, and the team members are using Jira to plan in stories for the coming sprints. So that's, and don't hesitate again to interrupt me if you have questions or you want something to be more precise. So that's the team. If we go further and we look at the features, actually they're created inside a specific project. Because in Jira, there's no such thing as standard as a feature. Actually, we're using epics for that. So during this presentation, features and epics are synonyms simply because what we call a feature in the SAFe methodology and other frameworks in Jira, we translate it as an epic. So what you see here is a Kanban board with 3 different columns. Usually there can be much more, and the features that are created and that are visible here. So every program has its own set of features. Then if we go further, we will take a look at Ativo Agile Programs for Jira. So you see here at the top that we have a specific tab called Programs. And if we click on it, I've already done that. What we see here is the welcome screen of Ativo Programs. At the left, there's a navigation bar, so where we can select a specific program because we can have multiple programs or release train running in parallel, and different periods or program increments, as it would be called in SAFe, that can run sequentially one after the other. But you could be in a situation where you're ending one program increment or period and you're already preparing the next one. Then we have 3 buttons to navigate to the main screens. The cycle is already open. The planning, that's the program board. And then the progress, those are visuals that we'll use later and see later in the Scrum of Scrums or ArtSync. And then we have different buttons for the configuration and some short links. So what we see here is a wheel or a cycle that shows the different steps in the program. The first thing I will do, it says here, select and create a program. So I will simply select the program blue that we were talking about. And it says that there are 4 teams in the program, so the ones that were mentioned before. And then secondly, I will select a period or program increment, and we've prepared one for you as well. And here we see that there are 7 sprints that are created and part of this period, and that we haven't closed any yet. Again, we're now doing the planning. We're not yet in the daily life after the program planning. The next steps, we will come back to it later, are of course the preparation of the program planning, the planning itself, and then the delivery or follow-up, where we also see some key metrics on the number of features that we have in the period, the number of features that are planned, the number of stories that are planned, and the number of stories and features that are closed. So I will now go further and open the program board, the program planning. So what you see here, for those of you familiar with SAFe already saw this a lot of times, have physically probably Post-its or with other tools. What you see here is a program board which has horizontally, you see the different sprints, so 1 to 7. And vertically, you see the different teams. So we have Team Lion, we have Team Rabbit, Team Horse, and Team Owl. What we've added here as well is an extra column, the unplanned column. That's actually to indicate that a feature is actually owned by a specific team, but not planned in yet. And that's very useful in the days before program planning, where specific teams are in the lead and need to prepare or do a breakdown of a feature. So that's, I think, useful for that. At the left, you have the backlog of features that are selected for the current period. And at the top, we have some options that we'll see later. The blue or the purple better boxes here, those are actually the features that are planned in. So what we can do is simply by dragging and dropping, we can plan a feature in a specific sprint of a specific team. So this is, for example, feature 9 that is planned now in sprint 3 of Team Rabbit. That means that it's Team Rabbit that's in the lead, but other teams can contribute to that. And those teams that contribute, it's not the case for that feature, but we see it for another feature, for feature 4, the chatbot MVP. It has 3 stories of other teams that are contributing to that feature. We have line 1 story here, line 3 story, and we have also all 15 that are all contributing to this feature. So those are dependency, cross-team dependency stories. Again, it's a story of one team that's contributing to the feature of another team. And the tool automatically can detect those cases. So if I would, for example, say, okay, this feature 4, actually it's not Team Rabbit that's in the lead. Let's say that it's Team Lion that's in the lead. The system will say, okay, all the stories from Team Lion that are contributing to that feature, those are not cross-team dependencies. But for Team Rabbit, we have 3 stories now that are contributing to the feature. So those are then tagged as cross-team dependencies. I have a question from Sruyana. Do we get a recording after the class? Yes. You will get a handout and you will get a recording afterwards. Good question. Thanks. You're welcome. So the tool can detect it. We can also change the dependencies from one sprint to the other sprint. For example, I've dragged and dropped story 4 to sprint 3. So if I go to the story in sprint Rabbit, and I will refresh the board. This can take a few seconds. So you see now that story 4 is in sprint 3 of Team Rabbit. Let's say that I will, in the backlog of the team says, yeah, okay, we have too much stories in sprint 3. We cannot deliver it in that sprint. We will move it to sprint 5, let's say. So I have a small question for confirmation. That's standard for Jira because the sprint is already open. So we have planned in story, no, I will put it in sprint 5. So we have planned story 4 in sprint 5. If we go back and refresh it, so we see now first story 4 is still in sprint 3. If we refresh it, you see that it moves to sprint 5. So the Jira plugin and Jira backlogs, they're synchronized, and with a simple refresh button, in a matter of seconds, you get the latest update. So you can work in parallel with multiple people. Even a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, a new client from California was using our plugin, and they had 100 persons contributing to the program planning exercise spread over the world in 3 different continents, in time zones all over the world, and they were all working together in the tool doing the program planning. They were happy, and it was a big success. So this shows that this can be done in parallel and that you can synchronize. Let's see further. Yeah, what we can also do simply is to hide the dependency stories, the chords, if you want to. There's a simple button for that. So let's hide them for a second and let's click on details for some other functionality that you typically need when you're doing save. The first, if you click on details, actually the features and the stories, they open up and you see some additional details. The first is a story points that you can define. The default setting there is to leave it open because the story points of a feature are calculated based on the stories under it. So if you leave it open, it will simply take the story points of those stories. But you can put a figure there and it will override that. Let's say, for example, that you're in the end of the PI and you want to add a feature with a specific amount of story points, you can do that. Secondly, if you're doing save, is that you want to define a commitment level. So saying that a certain feature or a certain is committed or uncommitted or stretch is possible if it's linked to a certain objective. And we can use that later as well in the metrics to see, okay, how many story points are committed, how many story points are not committed, how many are delivered in total. Does the story points get added to the feature automatically? Yes, if you add a story under that feature with story points, it will add it automatically. Sriyana, thanks for your question. And what we can also add is a color. That's, if you use a physical board, that's something that you often want to do as well. When you want to say, okay, this feature, it needs a management attention or attention from other teams because there's a major issue or risk. So we can change or set a color, and we can change the color. For example, we can put it on red and we say, okay, there's a blocking issue, for example, with a new technology. So we can raise issues and risks for features, and we can do the same as well for dependency stories. If you want to add a feature, we simply click, and I will maybe go back to the overview, close the details again. We can add features to the board simply by selecting it from the list of features. So we selecting here feature 17 and 18, and they're visible here, and they can be planned in immediately. Another possibility is that we create a feature, so a newly created feature. So if we add it here, it will be visible here. And if you go back to the feature Kanban and refresh it, you see that it's created as an epic in Jira, and it's also visible on the standard Kanban boards of Jira. We can also add dependencies manually, so we can, for example, say, okay, if we have this feature, we have, I will take a feature from Team Rabbit and link it to a story, line story 1, linked to feature 5. So you see here, line story 1 is added and it's linked to feature 5. Can you add a feature to multiple sprint? Question from Edward. Actually, it's a bit like a physical program board. You will add it to the latest sprint, the one in which it's delivered. So a feature when it's planned in a certain sprints, it doesn't mean that the feature starts in that sprint, but it simply means it ends in that sprint, and all the stories under it, of course, they can be started in a previous period. What you can do, however, if you have multiple periods, you can plan it in a specific sprint in, for example, this period, and in the next period, because it's not delivered, you can plan it again, but then in another sprint of the next period. Can we do the same with epics and stories? Not sure, Sriyana, what your question is referring to. What do you mean with the same? The all teams need to be in the same Jira project? No. Actually, I think it's even the best setting if every team has its own Jira project, because technically, if a team has its own Jira project, it means they have their own workflow, which is, I think, something very valuable. So we even promote teams to have their own Jira project, but if that's not possible, you can still combine and have multiple teams per Jira project. So both configurations are possible. So we're seeing here the features and the stories. My team uses epics and stories and no features. Yes, indeed. What's a feature? What I call a feature is technically an epic in Jira. So I'm using them as a synonym, feature and epic, in this presentation. Good question. So what we've done now is we've seen the program board. And what I want to show you is then the consolidation, the consolidated view at the end of the PI planning. It's a view that we can also use later in the Scrum of Scrums. So there's two possible views, a total view per program and a view per team. So if I click on the view per team, we see per team a dashboard. So you see here the dashboard for team line, but if I would scroll, there's other dashboards for the other teams. So I will stick with team line, and then you see there's 3 different sections. The top left section is a section with a summary of the risks and issues. I think that's quite important, that it's clearly visible what the risks and issues are, that you can take them up at the end of the PI planning session, during the PI planning session even, or during your Scrum of Scrums or ArtSync meeting. So I've seen teams do very efficient Scrum of Scrum meetings using this dashboard, because they really focus on the issues and risks, the things that matter. At the bottom, you see the sprints, the 7 sprints, and the features of that team, and the cross-team dependency story. So the big squares, again, are the features with the story points in it. And the double boxes, I would say, those are the stories. So remember, for line 1, we linked it to feature 5. You see it here in this view as well. And the metrics, I will come back to that. Can you create feature at a high level than epics, but not particularly relevant to this demo? No, we're using epics as features. So what I will do now is I will close some stories. So I will go back to Team Lion. I will put a story again in the first sprint. I will go to the first sprint, and I will quickly, this is very standard, of course, I will close some stories. So that's, of course, done by dragging a story first to progress and then done. And I will do it for the second sprint as well. I will close a few stories and I will leave one in progress. So now I will also assume in the configuration that the first 2 sprints are finished. So what I'm seeing here is the configuration screen with the different teams that are contributing to the program and the different sprints. So I'm putting sprints 1 and 2 on finished. And if I go back, so you see here that 2 out of the 7 sprints are closed. If I go back to the view per team, what we will see is that some of the pie charts, they're improving. How we see here immediately that 2 story points out of 8 are closed. And we also see there's not a lot of story points visible. I will do a small correction, sorry about that, in the demo, because I've put 150 story points on one epic. That's maybe a bit too much for good visualization. I change it to 10. I will go back to this view, so that's looking better or more visual. So what we see here at the top right are the metrics with I will close a few colors first to start with the beginning. So what you see in blue, the blue line is the total amount of story points that are planned in, and in black it's the actuals that are delivered in these 2 sprints, the first 2 sprints that we just closed. In purple, you have a line with the number of committed stories. Remember that we were able to choose if a feature was committed or not. And then in gray, there's a forecast for the next sprints to see, okay, if the team keeps the current velocity, where will they be in 7 sprints or in 5 after the 5 remaining sprints? So the gray line is an average. There's also a green line which gives the fastest sprint velocity, and an amber line which gives the slowest sprint velocity. So you get a kind of fork, I would say, that shows you where a team is likely to end. And you will see here then for this team, the team line is probably able to deliver the features and stories they committed to, but not the total amount of features and stories. Does the system handle the addition of unexpected features epics during the PI? Yes, you can do that. That's a good question, but then I have to go back to the planning, to the details. So when you commit, I will remove the card. When you commit, when you add a feature, you can say it's committed or stretched, but you can also say, yeah, you know what, it's extra in this period, or we descoped it because, yeah, we think we're not able to deliver it. So if I put it here as extra in the period, and I go back to the Scrum of Scrums visual, you see here that it's tagged as extra. So you can add features and tag them as well. Can it represent the progress of teams that do not estimate? No, unfortunately not. It's based on story points as it is today. So you'll need to have at least story point estimations. I think because we're at the end of the 30 minutes, this was what I wanted to show you. But there's still room for questions, of course, for those who like to stay a few more minutes. But for those who have to go because of the time constraint, thank you for attending. I will send the video afterwards. And what I can maybe also say, if you're interested to go further with this tool, if you think it's useful for you, what you can do is get a free trial. I can post the link in the chat as well. Get a free trial for 1 month and see, discover it further and see if it can help your organization. And I can tell you that the persons I worked with, they were very happy with it, both from IT and business, on the visibility it gives for the business and the predictability it gives for example, for IT management. So for those who are interested. So Suriana, yes, if you click on the link I've put in the chat, you get more information on the trial. Carlos says, thank you very much. Mostly stay in touch with pleasure. Looks great. It's good for doing a few things that we need. Yes, thanks. That's what we created it for. I'm glad that I was able to show that. Can we move stories between epics, or do you have to do that in Jira yourself? It's a question from Edward. For those who still have a few more minutes, I will continue answering questions. So I'll go back to the demo. So yes, you can, I will go back to the details section. So you can actually switch a story, link it to another epic. It's not something you would do often, but it could be the case if you split a feature, for example, during a PI, because you want to descope a part to the next PI, that could be use case. So I will put the chords back on. So we see here line 10, story line 10. It's linked to feature 5. What we can actually do is then say, okay, we don't want to link it to feature 5. We want to link it to, let's say, feature 9. And I'm able to search on it. So feature 9 is integrate web conferencing. So I've changed it, and it already immediately updated the chord. It now goes to that feature. So yes, that's possible. I don't see any link. Can we get the email? Yes, of course, you will get it in the email. Let's see if I didn't skip any questions. How to handle tests that need to be handled in the PI but are not part of the program, but we have a dependency to. So actually, it's a story of your team for another program. What I think there works best, because you can have multiple programs, is actually simply in the backlog of the team itself. For example, let's say that there's a story linked to a feature of another program. What works best there is to actually, in the backlog of the team, link it to the feature of the other program. So let's say, for example, we have another program called program 2, feature 1. So what we do here is simply say, okay, that story of Team Rabbit, it's contributing to the program of another team. And what we can then do in the other program is actually see that dependency there, because teams can contribute to multiple programs. That's, I think, something that's quite common. Even when you want to avoid it, there will always be teams that are supporting a whole organization, a security team or a networking team, for example. And those teams are simply present in multiple programs, and they will have part of their stories for one program, a part of their stories for another program. If you would look in the two, you would see the contribution of the team for that program in particular. So it filters out all the stories that are not part of the program. That's a good question. So Edward, thanks for the demo. Looks interesting. We'll have to play around with it, as I find that's usually the best way, obviously. What I can give you for those that still want to have, that still have a bit of time, I can post a link I've just posted a link in the chat. If you click on it, actually it will log you on into the system, the ones that I was showing automatically. And actually you can play a little bit around already. So if you click on the link that's in the chat, you will get a view of the current program. And you will be able to drag and drop and play around a bit as well. Just bear in mind that we do reset for security reason that account every day, and we reset all the data in the demo environment every day. So if you do something now, tomorrow it will be erased, but that's because of the demo environment. That's not because of the application, of course. Can you please provide the link again? That's strange. My bad. Yes, now you should see it. Sorry, I didn't select all attendees. And the trial, I will post it again, my bad. So that's for the link. You can play around a bit in it. And the trial, information on the trial, so it's 1 month for free. You can download it because we're a partner of Attention, a marketplace partner. You can download it yourself from the marketplace and activate a free trial like you would do for any plugin. Okay. Other questions or remarks? I will stay 5 minutes online, or even longer if you want. For those who are still want to play around, for those who have to leave, thank you and have a great evening or day, depending on where you are, of course. Thank you.